Hello and welcome to the last episode of my Bridgerton Season 4 video series. Today we're going to talk about Season 4 Part 2 and all of my thoughts and reactions to these last 4 episodes. I've got a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with Benedict and Sophie and then go from there. Part 2 had everything that was missing from Part 1. That sounds dramatic. Part 1 really wasn't missing that much. I expected there to be more tension than there actually was. Thinking back on previous seasons of Bridgerton, our characters, our main couple, were kind of like magnets, where they're meant to be together. They come together and you know from the beginning they're meant to be together. But then early on, maybe even in episode 1, they push each other apart. And they're kind of like magnets where they kind of push apart and then they snap back together. And they push apart and they snap back together. This season felt different to me because we have the ball where Benedict and Sophie meet and they're together. And then we have episode 2 where Benedict is searching for Sophie but can't find her. And because he can't find her and doesn't know who she is, if we're going back to that magnet analogy, they're so far apart that there's nothing pulling them together. Does that make sense? Then in episode 3, they're together again. And they're in their own little bubble. They're happy, they're flirting, there's banter, there's kissing, there's Sophie spying on Benedict while he's swimming naked in a lake. So the push and pull, it just felt different to me than past seasons. And because of that, I didn't need them to be together. But part 2 delivered on that for me. It delivered everything I needed. And part of that, let's get into the whole be my mistress thing. I mentioned this in my last reaction video. Some people didn't like my take on it. I know and understand that my take is very influenced by the fact that I am a modern woman living in this modern day and age. And I didn't like that Benedict was like, be my mistress. But also, I feel validated in my take and my thoughts on that because Sophie, a woman of that day and age, a woman of this show, was repulsed by that. So I stand by what I said, and I agree with Mr. Mondrich that had Benedict said it differently, I know I would have felt differently. I think Sophie would have felt a little bit differently. It wouldn't have changed her answer, I don't think, but she would have felt differently. Just saying be my mistress right after that episode in the staircase makes it seem like it's only about physicality, So yeah, I didn't like that. And had Benedict said what Mr. Mondrich said of, I care about you, I want to be together, but because of society, we can't be together. Will you be my mistress? I care about you and want to be together, and this is the only way it can happen. If he had said that, I wouldn't have even mentioned it in my last video. So, applause to Mr. Mondrich. He said it a million times better than Benedict, and I'm glad for that. But as much as I didn't like how Benedict said it, I do like the tension that it caused in episode 5. That you can tell that obviously Benedict wants to be with Sophie, and you can tell that Sophie wants to be with him. But now not only is she thinking about how much she loves her job, she's also thinking about the fact that he just asked her to be his mistress, and that is something that she has vowed she will never do. And so now she's got these 2 reasons why to keep herself separated from Benedict, to add that tension, add that space between their 2 magnets. I like that. And then Benedict amends his previous offer and says, tell Sophie that he loves her, that he cares about her. And that was beautiful. I love how Benedict said that. I thought it was very sweet and very tender, and I loved it. So again, just in episode 5 alone, we have this kind of push and pull, right? And that's what I was wanting from each episode in the previous part. Moving on to episode 6, I liked that for a moment we're thinking maybe they're going to be together again. And Benedict is, he organizes this little thing at the observatory, conservatory, whatever you call that, the orangery with oranges, which reminded me very much of Queen Charlotte for reasons that you hopefully will understand if you've seen the Queen Charlotte spin-off. But I liked that because I liked that he did that, and he's trying to show Sophie that it's not about you being my mistress. It's not, I care for you, and because I care for you, I want to take care of you. And I liked seeing that, and I thought it was sweet, and I thought it was cute, and I liked it a lot. Speaking of the conservatory, observatory, orangery, whatever it is, greenhouse, I don't know. Speaking of that scene, I do love that both Benedict and Sophie open up. We have Benedict saying, hey, by the way, I've been intimate with not only women in the past, but also men. And I'm not ashamed of that, but I want you to be aware of that because I love you and I respect you and I want you to know me better and more deeply, and that is a part of who I am. So there you go. And I like that he opened up in that way. I think that's very good for him. And Sophie opening up, I was not expecting her to open up that soon, But the fact that she tells him that she is illegitimate, that she's so scared about what could happen for them in the future in having kids, because she is the child of a nobleman and a mistress, and she doesn't want her children to feel the same way she felt her entire life. And so I like that she gave Benedict those details, because now I may be misremembering the book, maybe, I don't think I am, but in the book she doesn't open up to him until the very, very end of the book, and that bothered me. But in this episode, Antony also comes back, and with Antony in town, Antony's going to Benedict and saying, this is just a phase, you'll get over it, like, it's not worth it, she's not worth it, it's just a phase. Through those conversations with Benedict, even with conversations between Benedict and Violet, like, we have Violet and Antony for different reasons in different ways saying, don't do this, right? And through all of those conversations, Benedict knows, no, you're wrong, I do love her, and so don't tell me this is a phase, don't tell me that this can't work out. I know that it's not going to work out the way I want it to, but I love her so much that, like, I want to at least try. Right, and I loved that. But I also love that we see Sophie, the fact that she overhears this conversation between Benedict and Antony. She's the one that, again, kind of pulls back a little bit, and that makes sense because she comes, like, the way she was raised, she wanted a family so bad. She wanted a family, and she knows what it's like not to have a family, and she also knows the Bridgertons now, and she knows how strong their relationships are together as a family. And so she goes to Benedict and says, you know what, we're all good, we're not having a baby right now, so I'm gonna go take this other job. Your family means so much to you, stay with your family. So I liked that was again, that pull, it made sense. I liked that they pulled apart again, and that again we have another episode where there's a little bit of back and forth. Moving on to episode 7. When you're reminded of the fragility of life, it also puts things into perspective, and I liked how that affected Benedict and Sophie's relationship. In the beginning of episode 7, at the funeral, when Sophie finds Benedict outside and she's like, how are you? Are you okay? What can I do for you? I love that he says, like, if I'm with you, I know I'll just break down and my family needs me to be strong. And I like that I don't like that he thinks crying isn't strong, because men who cry are much stronger than men who don't. Men who understand their emotions are much stronger than men who repress their emotions, in my opinion. But that's a conversation for another day. What I like about that is that he feels safe with Sophie. He feels that he can just let out all of his emotions with her, because she is someone that, like, he can do that with. She is someone who sees him and understands his emotions. I like that insight that we get about how their relationship in that moment. I like that Benedict is affected by what Francesca says at Michaela's Scottish funeral for John about how Francesca felt different from everybody around her, felt misunderstood, felt unseen until she met John, until John saw her. He really understood her, and I like that that's what kind of snaps Benedict out of where he's at. And you can see that that's when he leaves to go propose to Sophie. I like that. And we'll get into more of the John and Francesca stuff in a minute, because that was a really big part of the season that, like, really affected me this season as it did last season. I just love them. But yeah, back to Benedict and Sophie. Moving on to episode 8. My thoughts on episode 8. I have mixed feelings about the whole jail arrest thing. When I read the book, that part of the book felt so melodramatic, so a completely different tone than the rest of the book, took me out of it. And I will say the show pulled it off better than I was expecting, but there was still a part of that whole thing that just felt a little bit off. And I understand that this could just be, like, my own confirmation bias coming through, because I didn't like it in the book. I was fully prepared not to like it in the show. I understand that. If you liked that part, great, I'm happy for you. There was just something about it that just still felt a little bit off. They pulled it off better than in the book, but it feels weird. But moving on, I love that Benedict didn't throw a fit when he found out that Sophie was his Cinderella lady. In the book, he throws a fit and he stomps around and he starts yelling at her like a child. But in the show, he didn't. Not that I expected him to. I knew that they would change that between the book and the show, but I really like how he handled it. And not only did he not throw a fit, he apologized to her for not recognizing her, and he knew that, like, not recognizing her would have hurt her, and so I love that. But yeah, I like how they involve the queen, and the queen is the solution. Once again, 2 seasons in a row, she is the solution to the big conflicts at the end of the show. This time around, it felt much more necessary for the queen to be involved, whereas last season, the queen getting involved felt... I didn't like it. But I also didn't like much of season 3, so again, I'm a little bit biased. We'll talk about Mrs. Mondrich's involvement in a second and what I think about her character moving forward, because I know she did take a big risk in helping in this way and getting the queen involved in this way. And I love the engagement at the ball. I thought that was cute. I will say though, I feel robbed because Sophie knew how to dance at the Queen's ball, which means that she and Benedict were practicing before the ball. And I just imagine them like practicing all afternoon before the ball. I would have liked to see that. I imagine Hyacinth and Gregory getting involved. I imagine Colin and Penelope being there. I imagine it being this little family thing where they're all practicing their dancing, kind of like the ball in season 2 between the Bridgertons and the Sharmas, where it's just the 2 families and they're dancing together, and I imagine it like that. I'm disappointed that they didn't include that because I've imagined it in my head now, and it's so cute, and it seems like such a big missed opportunity for cuteness. I am both mad and disappointed that was not included in the show because it's just... the way I imagine it is so adorable. I feel robbed. Let's move on. The wedding was also very cute. I like that Anthony was like, hey, Benedict, I was completely wrong. Never listen to me again. I liked that Alfie is the one to walk Sophie down the aisle. I thought that was cute. I like that the last thing we see in this season is that portrait that Benedict painted of Sophie and that she doesn't have the mask on anymore. And it's cute. Okay, it's cute. I love them, and I think this last part is what was missing from part 1. If part 1 were the whole season, I would be upset, but luckily we do have part 2, and I love their story and I think they're great. And before I get into my overall thoughts on the whole season and everything, let's get into some of the other characters and side plots real quick. Starting with my favorite character, the character I feel like I relate to most of any of the Bridgertons, Francesca. I told you we'd be talking about Francesca and John. I warned you, and I'm going to warn you now that I might tear up and my voice might get funny because I might be trying not to cry as I talk about Francesca and John. It's not fair. Going back to what Francesca says at the Scottish funeral about, feeling misunderstood because she felt so different and not being seen and all of that. I feel that way myself. I think that's why I relate so much to Francesca. And I also relate to when you are seen for the first time by the right person, it changes you. And so seeing that in season 3, I loved it. That's like the one redeeming factor of season 3 for me is Francesca and John. The rest of season 3, I've honestly forgotten a lot of it because I just didn't care about anything else in season 3. And I know lots of people didn't really care for them, didn't really understand them, but I did. I understood their story and I loved it. And I loved that John saw her and understood her. And I fell in love with John for loving her and seeing her and understanding her and letting her know that he understands her. And I'm heartbroken. It killed me when John died. I cried through all of episode 7, both times that I watched it. Yes, I've seen the whole season now twice. And to step away from John for just a second and focus more on Francesca, I hated that they made her do that exam. That was just... I think that's when I cried the most, just because it wasn't just sad tears, it was also like angry tears. It was, this is not fair. This is so humiliating. How dare they do this to her when she's suffering and grieving so much? And also it's just so invasive and unnecessary. Like, to me, unnecessary. If somebody in the comments wants to say,
oh, well, the time and like blah, 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 lines of inheritance.
Fine. But like, I get that. But also, as a woman, that is so invasive and so upsetting to see that. So, those are my thoughts. Thank you. Moving on to something a little bit lighter, but still upsetting. Michaela. She said she would stay with Francesca, and then she dipped so fast. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that because I relate to Francesca and I see myself in Francesca, and I felt personally attacked by the fact that Michaela left. But also because I understand, because I am aware of what happens in the books, I understand that she left likely because she was feeling attracted to Francesca and didn't want to let that be known by Francesca. And so she was scared by that attraction, by that pull towards Francesca. And so she left. I know that because I know of what happens in the book, not because it was shown to us in any significant way. in this show. I'm trying to think of how I would see this relationship building between Francesca and Michaela if I had no idea about what happens in the books. And I don't know that I would know that Michaela is into women. After thinking about it for some time, I might be like, maybe she's into Francesca. But I feel like it would feel like a stretch if I didn't know about what happens in the books. And so I feel like they could have just added they could have lingered a little bit more on Michaela after Francesca says, will you stay with me? There could have been a lingering moment, a lingering shot, just a little bit, just lingered on that a little bit more so we really see her be like, yeah, of course, and then have this like conflicted look on her face or something. I just feel like they could have done that a little bit better, made it a little bit more clear why she's leaving, without explicitly stating it. I'm not asking for that, but I feel like they could have just made it a little bit more clear. All right, okay, now moving on to other random things that I have thoughts about. Can somebody explain to me why I find Hyacinth's recital / ball to be so adorable? Can somebody explain that to me? Because that was just so cute. And that's all I have to say about it. But I liked it enough that I wanted to mention it here. It was cute. It was adorable. I liked the music choice. I just liked it. Okay, moving on. Oh, speaking of the ball, towards the end of that little ball that Hyacinth has, what Benedict says to his mother is unacceptable. I understand where he's coming from. I understand that he's frustrated that people keep saying he can't be with Sophie because he already knows that. He doesn't need people to remind him that he can't be with her in the way that he wants. I get that he's frustrated by that, but that does not give him the right to slut shame his own mother. That is not okay with me. Not okay with me. No, Benedict. Badly done, Benedict. Speaking of Violet now, moving on to Violet, I don't know that I believe her whole I'm a free spirit, I'm just like you, Benedict speech that she gives him. I don't know that I believe that, okay? Because for a few reasons. Number one, in the Queen Charlotte show, when we see scenes including young Violet, is she a little bit silly, a little bit cheeky? Is she like joking around and teasing her dad? Yes. Does that mean she's the exact same as Benedict, who is an artist, who has slept with men and women, sometimes both at the same time, who once got high as a kite during a family dinner? Like, does that mean she is the same as him? No. I think what she meant to say is, in my youth, I also felt frustrated by the restrictions of society and didn't like certain rules. I think that's what she meant to say, and that would have been more believable than what she did say, which is, you are my son, and I was exactly like you when I was younger. And I'm like, were you though? If you were, I'd be interested to see that. That being said, when she uses that whole thing about like, oh, I was so independent, when she uses that as an excuse not to marry Lord Anderson, that felt weird to me. I'm like, okay, hearing you say that to Benedict was already a stretch for me, and now that you're using this to reject a man you clearly like and care about, just doesn't feel like you, Violet. It doesn't feel like you. Now, I understand if you're not ready to get married. Totally get that. Use your kids as an excuse. You have a daughter who needs you because she is all alone because her husband just died. Oh, Francesca's going back to Scotland and she doesn't actually need you? Fine. Use Kate and Anthony's baby as an excuse. They just got back from India. You want to see the baby more. That is something that is believable for you, Violet. Not this, oh, I've just regained independence. No, lady, if you're really worried about your independence and like you want to be independent again, you could have been independent for the past 10 years since your husband died. Now that you're with somebody who wants to marry you, now you're like, no, I need to be a free spirit again. I need to go let my freak flag fly. I don't know, like it just didn't feel like Violet, and I didn't believe it for 1 second. We've talked about her long enough. Moving on. Okay, Mrs. Mondrich. She took a big risk with the queen. And on the one hand, I'm like, yes, I love that she did that because Benedict and Sophie get to be together now. On the other hand, I'm like, it feels like a move that they made to make her a replacement for Lady Danbury, to say, oh, look, she now not only is friends with the Bridgertons, but now she's in the queen's inner circle. Now the queen trusts her and likes her. So now we can get rid of Lady Danbury. Do I think they will actually get rid of Lady Danbury just like that? No. I think my thoughts are that she'll fizzle out. Kind of like Anthony and Kate and other characters who have fizzled out. She's not going to be in as many episodes, but still, I don't like how it's kind of like a 1-for-1 replacement, that we have this one character who is both the queen's best friend now, or becoming the queen's best friend, and also in with the Bridgertons, because that's like Lady Danbury's thing. I don't want it to feel like she is replacing Lady Danbury. I want her to feel like she's got her own pair of shoes, right? I want her to have her own shoes, if you remember that part, and be her own character. And if she's connected to the Queen and the Bridgertons, great for her. But I don't know. I just feel a little bit hesitant and a little bit worried just because I like Lady Danbury and I don't want to see her go. I don't know if there's anything that's been said or announced about contracts or whatever for next season. I don't know. So if you do know any of the behind the scenes news about what might be happening with Lady Danbury in next season, let me know in the comments down below, because I don't know that kind of official stuff. I like Mrs. Mondrich because she took that big risk, and I'm curious because of that. I am curious to see what happens with her character moving forward, but I'm also not ready to say goodbye to Lady Danbury. Speaking of next season and like future seasons, I feel like could go either way between Francesca and Eloise. Personally, I think it needs to be Eloise that goes first, because I loved her character in the first 2 seasons, but since then I feel like my like for her character has kind of faded. I feel like she's felt kind of lost, felt kind of out of place a little bit, and I think it's time for her to have her own season, to be the main character, to be the focus. I think that'd be fun to see her character, who's been like so against it, fall in love now. And I think there were some moments, especially after John died, where she's thinking about it, and like when she talks to Cressida, where you can kind of see the gears turning, where she's like, maybe this isn't so bad, maybe I'd be open to this. So I'm curious to see that. And also, just from a pattern standpoint, there's always a moment in any season of Bridgerton where the previous couple from the previous season gives advice to the current main Bridgerton character, right? And I've always loved Benedict and Eloise's relationship as siblings, their friendship, and so I would love to see Benedict giving Eloise that advice. And also, now that like Sophie and Eloise have a bit of a relationship, I would be interested to see her advice that she would give to Eloise as well. But if they do go in the Francesca direction, I think there is still opportunity for there to be a nice moment between Francesca and Benedict, because Benedict is bi and Francesca's falling in love with Michaela, right? I feel like there could be a moment where Benedict opens up to her about that and say something similar to what he said to Sophie. You can love Michaela and also love John. You know, you can love both, because I have loved both women and men in the past myself. And that's all I have to say about what may happen next season. Either way, I'm really looking forward to next season, because this season really redeemed Bridgerton for me. Thinking, as I've been watching this season and thinking about season 3, I liked season 3 in the moment. As I was watching it, there were things I liked, but like after having some time, after like finishing it and thinking on it sometime, I realized I forgot basically all of it except for Francesca and John's story. I forgot pretty much all of it, but this season redeemed it for me. I love this season. If we're talking about favorite seasons, I heard somebody say this and I agree, there's a difference between your favorite season and your favorite couple. And so I want to talk about that. And also there's a difference between my favorite and what I think is the best, just overall. And you may disagree with me on favorites, on best, on like couples, on whatever, but if we're talking favorite couple, you know, I think you know, given what I've said, my favorite couple is John and Francesca. So far, I know they are not a main couple. I know that Francesca is going to fall in love again with Michaela, but for now, they are my favorite couple. But if we're talking main couple, I don't know. I can't decide between Kate and Anthony and Benedict and Sophie. Benedict and Sophie, I feel like I relate more to feeling seen, feeling understood by somebody, wanting to be around them because you want to be understood. I like that aspect of Benedict and Sophie. I also think their conversations about the whole class thing and like the mistress thing, I find those deeper conversations really interesting with them. So there's a lot that I like about them, and I feel like they feel more real. But I also love, although I can't relate to it in any way, I do love the banter that turns into bickering, that turns into flirting, that turns into bickering again, that turns into India is not far enough, you are the bane of my existence and the object of all of my desires. I love that. I love that dynamic between Kate and Anthony in season 2. It's not relatable to me at all, but also I want Bridgerton to be swept away into a fictional, fantastical world, and so I like that it feels fictional. It feels unreal in a magical, romantic kind of way. But I do also relate to Kate and Anthony on an individual level. They are both the oldest siblings. They both really care about their families. They both put other people's needs ahead of their own needs. And so I relate to that part of their characters on an individual level. So I like both Kate and Anthony and Benedict and Sophie. If we're talking main couples, I can't decide which one I like better. And because of that, I can't decide which season is my favorite, because there's something about the Kate and Anthony story that just has a grip on me, has a hold on me that I cannot break. It has its teeth sunk into me real deep. But if we're talking about the season, like what else happens in that season, I don't remember much of the other storylines. I remember little bits and pieces, but of the bits and pieces I remember from other people's storylines, not too interested in any of them enough to like really like it. But the part of season 2 that I do like, I love, you know? Whereas like Benedict and Sophie season 4, I like Benedict and Sophie a lot. I really like them as a couple. I also really like all the other things that are happening in season 4, particularly because Francesca. I like Francesca. I like that she's a big part of this season. And I also do like seeing Eloise and Hyacinth. I like their storyline this season. I like seeing some of the younger siblings start to become more integrated in the story a little bit more. And so there's a lot that I like about season 4, there's a lot more to it that I like than season 2. So like if we're talking objectively, numbers, percentage of what I like versus what I don't, season 4 probably is the better season. So like we'll say it's the best season for that reason. But favorite season, I don't know if I can separate couple from the season when it comes to Benedict and Sophie and Kate and Anthony. And I don't know if I can separate that because I really, really like both couples and I really like both seasons. But yeah, I don't know. I liked it a lot. I think I mentioned this earlier, but I have watched it through twice now. If I want to watch something again immediately after watching it, or even like a day or two after watching it, that is a sign to me that this isn't just good for the moment. I like it. So season 4 is the first season since season 2, including Queen Charlotte, including that story. I think this is the only season that I've wanted to watch immediately after finishing it all the way through. There have been moments, like there were moments in Queen Charlotte that I rewatched. There were moments in season 1 that I rewatched, but I didn't watch the entire thing a second time. But I did for season 2 and season 4. So I liked this season a lot. Objectively speaking, it's probably the best season. Subjectively speaking, I don't know. It is fighting for its life with season 2 still, just because I love Kate and Anthony so much. And I've had a lot of time for that love to really sink its roots into me. I've used so many analogies about how much I love season 2 at this point. I love season 2, and give me 4 years and some time to think about season 4 some more, and it may easily surpass season 2 as my favorite. So those are my thoughts. Do you agree with me? Have you watched season 4 all the way through now? What did you think of it? How would you rank the 4 seasons of Bridgerton? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm super interested to know what you think. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble about Bridgerton. I will see you in my next video. Bye!